and welcome back to Football Made Simple. Euro 2020 culminated at Wembley, with Southgate's England hosting Mancini's Italy. Both sides have been largely impressive at the tournament, so it was a tough one to call. But in the end, the match finished 1-1 after extra time, thanks to goals by Bonucci and Shaw, with Italy eventually coming through after penalties, meaning that they are the champions of Europe. The XG showed that Italy created more, which could be expected as England had such an early lead. But what tactics did both managers use? Let's take a look. A quick reminder of the formations that Southgate and Mancini used for the showpiece final, with England going with a back three whilst Italy stuck with the 4-3-3. Pre-match there was a chance that England stuck with their 4-2-3-1, which they've had so much success with, but they opted for a back three with Trippier in for Saka, whilst Italy stuck to their tried and true 4-3-3 with Emerson at left back. If you want to get formations like this, check out our video sponsor, the OneFootball app. It is the best app around, and throughout the summer, they will keep you up to date with the latest news and transfers for the clubs that you choose to follow on the app. All you have to do is download it through the link in the description below. Let's start with Italy as they dominated with 66% of the ball. From the goal kick, Bonucci and Chiellini would split to the edge of the box, and although England's front three would move high, the idea wasn't to apply any pressure, but rather cut off the pivots and hope that the threat of their front three pressing might force Italy long. But Italy looked to draw England higher up the pitch by playing short, forcing the front three to press. This would mean that England's pivots now had to push up to press Italy's pivots, creating more space between the lines, and one of Immobile and Insigne would drop between the lines to receive, whilst the other gave some depth. And in open play, initially, England's defensive structure worked well after the early lead. Italy used their usual build-up shape most of the match, which was a 3-2-5 with Di Lorenzo tucked in and Barella in the right half space, with Insigne moving infield and Emerson high on the left. And this front five is why Southgate opted for the back five, as it meant that England would almost never be outnumbered in defence. And again, England defended with the front three, looking to shield the ball into the pivots early so that Rice and Phillips could protect the space deeper between the lines, picking up the men in the half spaces while still being able to spring out and press if the first line of pressure was broken. Early on this worked well, heavily limiting the influence of Verratti and Jorginho. But both of these pivots are so technical that when the line was broken, intricate short passing could allow Italy to drive higher up the pitch. And at times, if you can't go through the block, going over it is a great alternative. So with Bonucci in particular having time on the ball, he often looked for longer balls in behind Trippier and Walker to Insigne or Emerson, leading to some good situations. We saw Insigne look to make the difference early on by dropping into this pocket, and although Walker could push up at times, he could be reluctant as the threat of Bonucci's switch had been established. But even when Insigne was able to drive higher up from these positions, it was hard to pick out Immobile, as he was often 3 versus 1 down. But in order to get more time on the ball and draw men higher, Jorginho and Verratti began to drop deeper. Phillips in particular, and later Henderson, were aggressive on Verratti, following him into deeper regions. So this would open up space higher up the pitch, as Insigne off the left was happy dropping into these regions. But it also created more space down the right hand side, where Barella could drop in. And unlike Walker on the right, who was happy to push up onto Insigne at times, Maguire, due to his limited mobility, wouldn't be willing to do so, meaning that Barella and later Cristante could receive. But generally, in 1 versus 1 situations, Chiesa was the main threat, often able to get past his man and into dangerous shooting positions higher up the pitch. But with Verratti dropping deep and having drawn the midfielder, Chiellini could also move into space down the outside. but this didn't come to much as his technical ability isn't the best. But generally, after going ahead so early, England sat far too deep, inviting attack after attack. England didn't have much of the ball, but what did they do when they did have it? From goal kicks, Maguire and Walker provided deep options, with Stones stepping into midfield to be a second pivot, with either Phillips or Rice pushing higher. In these scenarios, Italy would press high, with Insigne coming narrow and Chiesa remaining deeper. And Pickford didn't take any risks going short, instead looking to find Kane at every chance. In open play, Italy's shape was completely different, now using a dedicated front three to press and Barella and Verratti looking to go man-to-man, while Jorginho provided some protection. And this is where we saw one disadvantage of Italy's back four against England's front five, as it meant that in these scenarios, Sterling or Mount could drop deeper to provide options by overloading the midfield, which is exactly what happened time and again, with Stones finding line-breaking passes into Sterling, who could then begin the next phase of play. But England exploited a similar problem Italy had against Spain, with Kane dropping into the midfield, often to overload it and get on the ball, and crucially in these phases Sterling would take up the centre-forward role. Kane could then look to begin the next phase of play. We see some of this in England's goal. It is a counter from a set piece, but the principles are similar, with Kane picking up the ball in midfield and Sterling attacking the centre-forward space. Kane is then able to find Trippier wide, and Walker's overlap gives him a bit more space. Sterling and Kane's central presence then frees Shaw on the back post. When Kane dropped deeper higher up, it was often to the left-hand side, which created an overload dragging Italy across, and that would make space down the right, where Trippier and Walker combined well. Late on, Southgate switched to a 4-3-3 with Phillips the sole pivot, and this made it hard for England to hold on to the ball and progress, as Mount and Henderson pushed extremely high, making Phillips isolated as the single pivot. Overall, Italy were probably the deserved winners, as after taking an early lead, England just sat far too deep. And special credit must be given to Mancini for turning around this Italian team and taking them all the way to the end. Southgate also led England to a brilliant second place finish, admittedly with a kind run. But, as Chiellini said pre-match, England's bench alone was good enough to get to the final, and if you want a closer look at how England revolutionized their youth system to make this possible, check out this video, which will be linked below. But what did you make of this match? Drop it down below. And if you want even more content, whilst helping to support the channel, consider checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/footballmadesimple. You'll get early access to videos, exclusive videos, as well as access to the upcoming FMS video podcast. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.